Hello everybody, this is Danny from Deep South Homestead on Porch Time today. Got a couple of subjects I've been really working on. One of them I'm holding off on because I want more detailed information, but this one I do know about because this one's based on experience, so I know that I'm accurate on it. So this one is, are they weeding out homesteading? Stop and think about it. If you're a millennialist, you probably don't quite know what that means because you don't really know what the past used to be like. And there are those that are older than I am that know more than I know. But I thought that this topic would be probably a good one to talk about because I want to go back into the past and I want to come into the future, and I want us to compare what it used to be like versus what it's like today, and let's see if they're truly trying to weed out homesteading. Now, we know that the homesteading laws were abolished by the 80s. We know that. I think Alaska was the first state, the last state to go with homesteading laws as far as being able to homestead land, if I'm correct on that. It's been a long time since I looked back at any of these details, but I want to talk about how things has changed. Now, those that did not live during a particular era, mainly, I'm going to start from, say, 1960 and come forward, because that's an era that I know about. When I was a child, this kind of sounds like when your kids get upset, with you, when I was your age, you point out when I was your age, and then they go like, oh my God, no, this is not like that. When I was a child, things were completely different than they are now, and it's difficult for people of my era to make these changes, let me say, because we know how it used to be. Used to, every small town, as well as a large town, had what was called an implement store. They had a co-op where you could go and get feed and stuff like that. And they also had an implement store. Now, the one here in my town was in an old wooden building. I can well remember walking into it. Up until I was in my 20s, I can remember walking into it, and the old wooden floor, you could hear it creaking while you walked across the floor and everything. And I can remember going in the front of it, and they would have all these wooden seed bins set up on an angle, and they'd have scoops at each one of them, and at the end of the aisle, they would have the old scales hanging there, and you could get your seeds by the pound or by the ounce, or so many scoops of something was a certain price. And then usually at the end of the rows would be an old foot tub sitting there with water in it, and we could buy tomatoes in the bundles. Now, this is something that still amazes me even to this day. Used to, we could get you could get either 50 tomato plants in a bundle, or you could get 100 tomato plants in a bundle. And when I say a bundle, they just literally pulled them up out of the ground, estimated about how many was in the bundle, and they tied a string around them, and they set the roots back down in water. And these little things wasn't but about, I don't know, anywhere between 4 and 6 inches tall. You brought those things home, he'd wrap them up in a piece of paper, newspaper usually, or brown paper. You'd bring those things home, and you'd have your rows made up in the garden, and you go out through there and you take a hoe handle, and you just job a hole in the ground, and you drop that tomato plant down in it, and somebody come along behind you with water, and they just pour water and they wash the dirt down in on that hole, and those things growed like crazy. Now, today, let's compare it to today. Today, that store doesn't even exist in most places. Now, in some of your Amish communities, you probably still get these things, but For most of us in our regular little towns, these stores have ceased to exist. This one went out of business many years ago when the old man died. With the exception now in Wanda's town where she's from, there's still one of the old stores is still there, but they don't carry near what they used to carry. Now let's compare tomato plants from where you used to buy them 50 or 100 to a bundle to, and it was like you could get 100 of them for like $3. You know, you could get 50 for like $1.50 or something like that. Today, you go to, everybody goes to Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, the big box stores now. There's a few co-ops still around here and there. You buy tomato plants and based on pot size. You get one plant. Some of them's up to $4, $7 for the big plants, you know, in pots. And if you get a 6-cup tray or a 9-cup tray or something like that, you pay $3 and $4 for 6 or so tomato plants, and they've been babied in the perfect little growing medium, and you know, and they've had the spray put on them to keep them from the growth retardant put on them to keep them from growing too spindly looking while they're in these little pots. And we bring them home and we baby them in the soil and everything, and then they die. Lots of them die. Guys, it's just different. You know, now we still get our sweet potato slips like that here. I mean, they ship them in still. But you know, these old implement stores, when you went into one of them, you could get anything from a lard can to cast iron to cook with, seeds, your starter plants, seed potatoes, any old plows, handles, the old wooden handles for the mule drawn stuff, hoe handles, shovel handles, axes, sledgehammers, guys. I mean, I could go on and on. Flour sacks. Any type of seed that you can even comprehend, because you see that's another issue there that's a pretty big issue. You take a lot of our seeds. Used to there were hundreds of varieties of different seeds. The big seed companies now have narrowed that down to where if you go to look to buy seeds of any kind, you'll probably only find between 10 and 15 different types of, say, peas or whatever, beans or anything like that, where used to there were literally hundreds of varieties to choose from, and they were all heirlooms. Now, you'd find a hybrid every now and then, but majority of everything was heirlooms, so you could save your own seeds. Well, the powers to be has basically done away with a lot of this stuff, and they forced us to have to go to big box stores to virtually purchase stuff now. And it's stuff grown by major companies that like Bonnie's Plants and seeds. You know, you got to go to places like Baker Creek and Pine Tree, and I mean, there's so many seed companies out there, and about 78 or 79% of them is owned by Monsanto. Even if they're organic, Monsanto still owns them. And when you buy organic stuff, you're still supporting Monsanto. So there is an agenda now to force homesteading out of the picture. Land has gotten to be so expensive now that it's very, very difficult, especially for a young person, let's say a millennialist age person, to actually go out and purchase any kind of farm or land or anything like that and not be head over heels deep in debt, because land has just gotten to be, real estate has just gotten to be too expensive in a lot of places, you know. I can remember in I'm trying to remember the exact year, 1989, I bought land for $750 an acre. And it was actually cheaper than that in a lot of places. I could have went, if I'd have moved to a different location from where I am now, I could have got it for as low as $200 an acre. And at that time, I thought, gosh, land is just getting so expensive. 2 years later, I bought another 10 acres. I paid $950 an acre. 2 years after that, I bought more land. I paid $1,500 an acre for it. And I just stopped at a certain point because I was like, man, land is just getting so outrageous. But then I turned around and sold a piece of it for $7,000 an acre. Now, that's how fast things have changed just since 1989. Actually in 2000, I'll say this, in the year 2000, I was going to move to central Mississippi. And I actually approached a person up there about purchasing their land, and they were going to sell it to me for $750 an acre in 2000. So things has changed, guys. One way to weed out homesteading is to raise the price of land to the point where people can't afford it. Another way, get out of here, bees. Man, there's bees. It seems like since it's turned hot, bees are everywhere. But another way is to literally place so many covenants and so many ordinances into existence that it's extremely hard for somebody to live and grow up the way that I grew up. Even in the year 2000, and so it was 2003, I was able to build a home, move into it without it being finished, and have nothing but plywood on the outside and house wrap on it and studs on the inside, no electrical, very few windows, very few doors or anything like that, but I could still move into it. In most places, you try that today and it just will not work. They will not permit it because you got to have all these permits now. You got to have foundation permits, electrical permits, whatever, AC permits, or heating and vac, whatever you want to call it, before you can get an occupancy permit. So that's another way that they began to weed out homesteading. And guys, the fact is they're just making it harder on us because now everything's being zoned. It's commercial zoning, it's residential zoning. And in these zonings come certain laws that you have to abide by. Realtors come in and buy huge chunks of land. If they sell it in large pieces, they don't have to abide by certain rules. But if they break it in anything less than, I think they told me 5-acre plots or anything like that, then they have to fall under specific neighborhood guidelines, and they have to put these covenants with it and everything. So it's getting where it's extremely difficult to be a homesteader, and I really feel for the millennial age people coming along, and even them younger than the millennials. I don't even know what you call them. I mean, I don't even know what the newer generation's called, okay? I hadn't even looked into it that far. But I feel for these because they are not going to have the same opportunities that we had. Going back to these implement stores, when you walked in the store, you could actually buy your canning jars there, you could buy your lids there, your pectin, your sugar. You could get anything like that there at these stores. You could buy molasses, you could buy feed, you could buy just about anything, guys. It was a one-stop shop, kind of like a general store for homesteading. Harnesses for horses and oxen, yokes, you could buy all this stuff there. And guys, I'll be honest with you, at my age, and I remembering this stuff, I miss this kind of stuff because now everybody says, oh, go to Tractor Supply. Tractor Supply has what you need. Tractor Supply don't have crap compared to what the implement stores used to have. Tractor Supply basically caters to the hobby gardeners. They have nothing to do with homesteading and basics. Now you can get some stuff there that you can use on homesteading, but they're nothing. I mean absolutely nothing compared to what the old-timey implement stores was, the old mom and pop ones. Because if you went into an implement store, it was guaranteed you could find anything in that store you needed. I don't care if it was a hoe, a rake, a shovel, a plow point, whatever. You name it. Lard cans, you could get casings for smoking your meat in, and whatever. They had literally syrup cans. I used to go to the one up in upper state here from us. It was about I think it was about 75 miles from where I live at now. And another one about 100 miles from here. I went to get my syrup cans from them because I made homemade syrup in it. They still carried the syrup cans. Try to find syrup cans today. Everybody today is going over to glass jars. Nobody hardly ever use the old metal cans no more because you can't get them. There are still some places that gets them, but they're just not as prevalent because used to every community had a syrup mill, and there was somebody that made cane syrup, sorghum syrup, molasses, or whatever in every community. There was always somebody that had a mill. Now, that kind of stuff is so scarce, you'll be lucky if you ever even find anybody who does it anymore. Most things done now done commercially because there's laws and regulations run by the health departments and stuff like that to be able to make sure it's safe. Okay, because they've tried to scare everybody into believing you're going to die or get sick if you eat something from a homestead that's not USDA approved. Well, let me tell you something. There ain't a thing at Deep South Homestead USDA approved, and I ain't nothing here going to be USDA approved. And we have not gotten sick from anything we've ever ate here. People used to cure meat and leave it hanging in the smokehouse up to 6 and 7 years. Just go out there in the middle of a 100-something degree temperature and cut a piece of meat off of something in the smokehouse, re-salt it, re-black pepper it or red pepper it or whatever it is, and hang it back up there. Good for several more years, hanging in 100-degree heat outside, never ruined. And by nowadays, people's like, oh, if you don't leave it in the refrigerator over, if it ain't in the refrigerator, you're gonna get sick. You get botulism or something, and you're gonna die. And you know what? They're probably right because everything today is not done the way it used to be done. Used to, old people knew if something was bad. They didn't have to have tests run on it. These people knew when something wasn't any good because it's a skill they had. These skills are all lost today. I make bacon here for people. I do it for myself. And I cure my own. And I'll guarantee you, anybody that's ever ate my stuff here out of my smokehouse has told me I'll never buy store-bought again. Because they're like, oh my God, this is the best stuff I have ever put in my mouth. And the problem today, guys, listen to me now. I want y'all to pay attention when I tell you this. The problem today is this. We don't know what real food tastes like. And that hurts me because I know what real food's supposed to taste like. But the younger generation coming on, and I keep using the word millennial because it's from the 1980s, mid-1980s on until now, they don't know what real food is supposed to taste like. I have people who will eat food and go, gosh, I don't know if I can eat that or not. That don't taste like what I'm used to eating out of a can. Well, no, it's not going to taste what you're used to eating like out of a can because it's not supposed to, because what you're eating out of a can is crap. Homegrown stuff tastes 100% different than junk out of a can. Because usually what you're getting out of a can has been processed to the point and chemicalized to the point it's just freaking crap. Now, I know that's pretty strong, harsh language, but you know what? It's the honest to God truth. You pull an onion up out of your garden that you grow yourself and eat it. It tastes like candy. Literally. You go to that grocery store and buy an onion and try to eat it, and it's so pungent that it burns your eyes, tears is running all down your eyes. I mean, your hands are burning and everything like that. Guys, it's just different. Home-raised potatoes here. We raise our potatoes here. We've let people try some of our home-raised Irish potatoes. We call them Irish potatoes because they're red. And they're actually the red Pontiacs, where it's just the term Irish potato is what we use in the South. You dig a new potato up out of the ground, mix it with some new snap beans or new green beans or whatever you want to call them. And I'm going to tell you something. It don't taste like nothing out of no can. The problem is today, nobody knows what real food's supposed to taste like. We're so used to eating cardboard, and I call it cardboard because it's like cardboard. It has absolutely no taste to it whatsoever. That when we do eat something that's real food, we're like, ooh, I don't know if I like that or not. Because it don't taste like what I'm used to eating. Well, real food's not going to taste like cardboard, flavored cardboard. Let me put it that way. Let's call it flavored cardboard because that's what it is. It was picked green. It was shipped some 1,500 miles as a minimum, usually. It was injected with some sort of ethylene gas or something like that to ripen it. So it's not going to have any taste whatsoever. It's kind of like there's rules with watermelons. If you go to the store and you buy a watermelon and you roll it over and the bottom of it's not yellow in the store, don't buy it. If you cut that watermelon open and the heart of it's already split and busted and got a 1/2 inch wide gap in it, don't eat it. Throw it away. Because there was chemicals used and it was injected into that watermelon while it was growing in order to make it grow faster and sweeter. Usually they dump some sort of soda to it. They called it soda. Ammonium nitrate, whatever, was dumped to that stuff to make it grow off really, really fast. And if you eat it, that soda's locked in the juices inside that watermelon and you're going to end up with a severe stomach cramp. Because that stuff's burning the lining of your stomach that's in it. There's just rules, guys, when you plant and you grow stuff. All the growing techniques have been just about lost. The day and age now that we live in. See, when I was a kid coming up 40 years ago, and I'm going to say 40 because at 40 I was out in the fields, I was a teenager. There were no such thing as chemtrails. We could plant a garden out there, and I'm going to tell you what, that thing flourished. I mean, it growed like crazy. We had very few invasive weeds at that time. Now, there was things like Bermuda grass and kudzu and things like that if you had it on your property. Yeah, those were invasive. But they weren't all the other different problems that you had down in the deep south I'm talking about. But guys, you could plant a garden, and it just like... Let me tell you about the weather, because that's what I remember the most. As a kid, walking along behind my daddy had an old Cub Cadet, if y'all know what that is, a little 18 horsepower Cub Cadet tractor. The plows was right in front of you, seat underneath you there. You could watch, as you was plowing, you could look down and watch your plows in the dirt going to your plant. And my daddy would do our gardens with that thing, and we would come along behind him in the fields and do whatever needed doing out there in the fields. And it would come up a little thunderstorm. Usually it would come around about 2 or 3 o'clock in the evening. It'd come up a little thunderstorm. And it might get rough for a little while. It'd rain like crazy, and before the sun went down, you could look in the western sky and you'd see the sun setting. It'd be cooled off, the garden would be watered, and you could see the sun setting in the west. Clouds would be dissipating. Guys, now, it don't do that anymore. If we have anything nowadays, it's severe weather. We're going to get a 4 or 5 inch downpour, and it's going to be literally within an hour or two, or either it's going to just flood for days and the rivers are going to get out of banks and everything like that, or either it's going to turn off to be 100 and something degrees like we had here 2 years ago. It was over 100 degrees for over 100 days in a row. Everything's going to burn up, and like we are right now, we've been 4 weeks with no rain. That was unheard of when I was a kid. It rained every week, and the clouds cleared off in the evening time. You had the beautiful sunsets. Now we're sitting here, we're on week 4. Everything we got is just a dust bowl. It's just powder, literal powder. It's like baby powder, talc powder in the garden. You walk, you just choke to death from the dust in the garden. That's what I'm talking about. Things has changed. Man has tampered with the weather. They're trying to control it and do different things with it, and guys, they have just screwed with everything. Our seeds have been tampered with. Everything's genetically modified or hybridized. All wheat's had hybridization done to it. Rice has been hybridized. There's been so much stuff. I mean, most all your rice now has got arsenic in it. I mean, it's just whatever. It's just today, the food system is just destroyed, and it's like they're trying to weed out homesteading altogether because they're making it more and more difficult. Now, I am a seasoned gardener. I have gardened since I was a small kid. I had my own fields by the time I was 15 years old, providing stuff for factories. And literally, I have trouble today growing anything. As much as I know about gardening, I have extreme problems growing anything. I literally failed this year on green beans. We planted them twice, and we got one piece of a row up, and it has done nothing but just, it's dying right now. We went from freezing temperatures in 2 weeks to a 93 and 95 degree temperature, even up to 100 and something degrees, heat index. And they just died. Used to, I could grow English peas, and I could pick English peas and just pick them and pick them and pick them and pick them. Now, I've got this thing down to an art and to a science, and I know I have to start watching the weather in January, and I have to know what day in January I'm going to get them things in the ground, because I know I'm going to have a 2-week window opportunity to pick English peas if the weather doesn't screw up too bad to get my English peas in, and usually at the end of that 2 weeks, they're gone. I have failed and failed and failed to grow onions until this year. I followed some advice I got from Dixondale on growing onions, and this year we were finally able to grow some decent onions. And I'm not going to say they were the best. They were like 2 to 4 inch onions, which I think the 4-inch ones is what I was after. But most of them were around 2.5 to 3 inches, but I would have rather had the big ones. But look, we are ecstatic because we finally figured out what we're doing. And yes, it did take some commercial fertilizer to do it, but guys, look, nothing grows like it used to grow. Oh, we're having just fits tomatoes. I am having fits with tomatoes, literally. I used to could grow tomatoes, I'd just be sick of them. I'd have them by the 5-gallon buckets. Literally, I could pick 10 to 15 5-gallon buckets of tomatoes every time I went out to the garden. Now I'm lucky if I pick 3 5-gallon buckets when I go out to the garden, or 2. Because it's just that hard to grow a good tomato. And then the blights hit it, and the just funguses and powdery mildews and you name it. Whatever. Fusarium wilt, tobacco mosaic viruses, whatever. All this kind of stuff hits everything now, simply because of all the chemicals that's in our atmosphere raining down on our plants, just like acid rain, literally destroying our crops, you know. Guys, I probably ranted enough here, you know. It's my belief that the powers to be are trying to weed out homesteading. And guys, my advice to you today is don't give in. Keep keeping on. Keep looking for the secrets to growing vegetables. Now, will everything I do here work where you're at? No. Will everything you work where you're at for me? No. But I watch diligently daily to try to learn little secrets and tidbits on what to do, how to do it, and I try it here, put my own little tweak on it, you might want to say, and hey, if it works, bam, it's going on YouTube, because if it worked for me, there may be somebody else in my growing zone that needs this, and I want to put it out there, and that's exactly what we do. Now, we do show some of our failures. I just told you about one of them, the green beans. We failed to get them up this year. My watermelons, I planted watermelons. I did not get one seed to germinate. We planted 4 rows of speckled butter beans. It's been 2 weeks. Not one bean has sprouted. These are seeds I saved, and I know they're good. Now, is a drought playing a part on this? It could be, but where I planted them at wasn't a drought area. It's down next to a stream, and the ground was plenty moist. So, guys, there's some stuff going on that we're going to have to really pull together as a YouTube community in order to find out what's the next person doing. Is it working? Don't be afraid to tell people your secrets, because you know what? That's what it's going to take to survive. We're going to all have to have one another, because the powers to be are trying to weed out homesteading. They're trying to make it impossible for us to homestead. Do you know, in my home county here, it's illegal to live off grid. I literally asked them, I said, why is it illegal to live off grid? They said because there's one rule in the code book, and that one rule says that a home must have a smoke detector in it, and it must be electrical and battery backup. My word to them was, well, what if I have solar and it's on a battery bank? I got nothing in response to that. They just said you can't live off grid permanently. Now you can live temporarily in a fish camp or a hunting camp or whatever you want to call it. But if it's a permanent dwelling place, it must have that smoke detector, and it must have electricity is the word they used, and it must have battery backup also, or you cannot live in it permanently. That's where we're at, guys. That's why homesteading is being weeded out, because I'm going to be honest with you, it's none of nobody's business what I do on my property. It's none of nobody's business how I live. Now, we have found out some things in our areas about outhouses and things like that, because we've talked to the state about it. And some of the things are a little bit encouraging in that area. I'm not going to go into all the rules and everything, but I was encouraged when I found it out. I found out a way I can actually have an outhouse if I want one. So that's a good thing. But there again, there's rules got to be followed. And guys, it's rules that's putting homesteading out of business if you want to look at it. So the powers to be are trying to weed out homesteading. I've ranted long enough here today, guys, and I know I've touched base with a lot of you guys because a lot of you live the way I'm talking about, because it gets on my nerves. So before I go any deeper or get any more out of shape and start really going off into some kind of a bad direction, I'm going to say thank you for sitting here and joining me this morning on Porch Time, and thank you for giving us your support. We really appreciate it. Go check out our Etsy stores. I have sweet potato manual books there. I have English pea books there I've wrote. There is sweet potato draws there. There's different types of seeds there. We are running low on some of them, but all these things are there on our Etsy store, deepsouthhomestead.etsy.com. Check it out, guys. If there's something there you want, that's the way we want our support to come in, is you to be able to help us out, because YouTube sure does like taking what we have. So Etsy is our income when it comes to surviving on this homestead. So thank you, guys, and y'all have a blessed day.